When most people hear the term private foundation, they think of charity, helping others, doing good. And while that's not untrue, it's also not the full picture. Private foundations have become one of the most misunderstood financial tools of the ultra-wealthy. Yes, they give money away, but they also preserve power, protect wealth, and provide multi-generational influence in ways that few other vehicles can match. In 2024, the total assets held by U.S. private foundations reached over $1.6 trillion, doubling in just the last 10 years. That's not small money quietly trickling to food banks and local causes. This is systematized influence, wrapped in a tax-exempt status and often cloaked in public goodwill. What sets private foundations apart isn't just the money, it's the structure. These are entities controlled almost entirely by families or individuals, where the board is often composed of relatives, trusted advisors, and legacy hires. And while the IRS requires that at least 5% of the foundation's assets be distributed for charitable purposes each year, that includes administrative costs, and many foundations stick close to that minimum. So what happens to the other 95%? It gets managed, grown, and deployed carefully, not just to do good, but to do good in ways that reinforce the family's long-term vision, values, and influence. Through foundations, ultra-wealthy families can shape education policy, scientific research, healthcare funding, environmental initiatives, and even international development, with very little oversight from the public or regulators. In this episode, we're not just looking at private foundations as charitable vehicles. We're examining them as dynastic power tools, how they're used to extend control far beyond a founder's lifetime, how they quietly fund ideologies, and how their tax benefits make it all incredibly efficient. This is the side of philanthropy most people never see. At the heart of every private foundation is a simple but powerful idea. You can give money away and still keep control. Control comes from governance, and ultra-wealthy families have turned foundation governance into an art form. First, the board. Foundations typically appoint family members and then slowly bring in the next generation through formal succession plans. The founders write rules, sometimes even legacy letters, that set out long-term goals, values, and ideological boundaries. These aren't just sentimental. They're binding philosophies designed to steer grant-making decisions decades into the future. Then there's the role of trust protectors and advisory committees, mechanisms that allow families to override board decisions, replace trustees, or adjust how assets are managed, all without going public. These tools create flexibility while maintaining an iron grip on direction. And don't overlook integration with the family office. For many of these dynasties, the foundation isn't some separate arm. It's part of a larger machine. Investments are coordinated, tax strategies aligned, and communications unified. The result: a foundation that not only advances the family's values, but supports its entire wealth structure. Perhaps most importantly, foundations give families a seat at the table indefinitely. While businesses can be sold, and political donations come with strict limits, a foundation, governed correctly, can operate forever. That's not accidental. It's intentional. And it's why so many of America's wealthiest families view foundations as the final pillar in their legacy plan. From the outside, it looks like charity. On the inside, it's governed influence with tax advantages. Let's be blunt. Private foundations aren't just about generosity. They're ideological machines, engineered to shape the world in the donor's image. Unlike political action committees, foundations don't have contribution limits or campaign finance rules. That makes them the perfect vessel for influence. A family can pour billions into charitable causes that just so happen to support their personal worldview, without ever disclosing the real strategy. Take the Koch network. Through a sprawling web of think tanks, academic programs, and nonprofits, the Koch family didn't just fund libertarian ideas. They've built the entire infrastructure for a political philosophy. Universities, publications, even grassroots groups, all seeded through foundation dollars. Or look at the Gates Foundation, which operates like a multinational policy organization. With diplomatic-style offices and strategic grants to global institutions, it sets agendas in global health, education, and agriculture. sometimes more effectively than governments. And the Walton Family Foundation. Their decades-long push for charter schools and educational choice didn't just influence policy, they reshaped the very conversation around what American education should be. This isn't conspiracy, it's strategy. Foundations invest in long-term intellectual capital. They fund research, sponsor fellowships, and support nonprofit media, all of which affect how the public thinks and how policymakers act. It's slow, quiet, and immensely powerful. And once the infrastructure is built, it doesn't go away. It shapes the next generation's sense of what's normal. So yes, foundations do good, but they also do power, carefully, strategically, and most of the time invisible. Behind every elite family foundation is a sophisticated tax strategy, and it's not just about generosity. It's about preserving wealth, avoiding taxes, and converting assets into long-term influence. Let's start with the big one, capital gains. Say a billionaire has $10 million in low-basis stock. If they sell, they owe millions in tax. But if they donate the stock to their private foundation, they dodge the capital gains bill entirely and get a charitable deduction for full fair market value. It's legal, it's efficient, and it saves them a fortune. Now zoom out, that $10 million goes into a tax-exempt vehicle the family controls. And they only have to spend 5% per year, including admin expenses, to meet IRS rules. The other 95%, it stays invested, growing, compounding, building dynastic power. And estate tax? Gone. Assets transferred to the foundation are removed from the taxable estate, meaning ultra-wealthy families can sidestep the 40% estate tax by shifting wealth into a vehicle they still control, just from a boardroom instead of a brokerage account. Even real estate, artwork, or business interests can sometimes be moved into foundations with careful structuring, though those require extra compliance muscle to avoid IRS scrutiny. This isn't loophole shopping, it's the core design of foundation law. The tax code rewards charitable intent, but when families use these tools with strategic governance and ideological purpose, they don't just reduce taxes, they build permanent influence, tax-free. Private foundations may be charitable on paper, but make no mistake, control is the name of the game, and the ultra-wealthy play it exceptionally well. First, the board. Foundations typically create governing structures where the family retains control indefinitely, often through staggered terms, reserved seats, or selection rights buried in bylaws. Want to make sure only your bloodline calls the shots? Easy, just make future board members subject to family nomination or approval. Some take it further with trust protectors or directed trustees who can override decisions, amend governance documents, or even replace board members. It's a backdoor veto built right into the system. And to keep the engine humming, families often embed their foundations within their family office infrastructure, integrating philanthropy with investment management, estate planning, and legacy strategy. That alignment ensures the mission stays on brand, even as generations shift. Even values are managed. Legacy letters or mission statements act like a family constitution, framing decisions in a way that feels principled but still serves long-term family objectives. Here's the big picture. Foundations aren't just for giving, they're for staying relevant. They're platforms for family governance, reputation management, and dynastic continuity, and the rules allow for it if you know how to play. Private foundations may look like pure generosity from the outside, but behind the scenes, they're often vehicles for perpetual control, ideological influence, and strategic wealth preservation. For ultra-wealthy families, these aren't just charitable arms. They're dynastic infrastructure. Legally tax-exempt, socially praised, and quietly powerful. Yes, they do real good, but they also raise real questions. Who's setting the agenda? Who's accountable? And where does public interest end and private influence begin? If you want to understand how the wealthiest families quietly shape the future, don't just look at their portfolios, look at their foundations. And if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe to Quiet Money Files for more profiles, more power plays, and the legacy strategies no one talks about until now.